You know, back when I was growing up, I was taught the importance of how our leaders are supposed to look on the world stage. It's more than being just a president of the United States of America. They need to present themselves on the world stage in a way that they are respected by other world leaders. They're also to know who our allies are, and they're to stand with those allies. They're also to know who our enemies are, and they're not to cater to those enemies. So when I hear someone like Donald Trump stand up and say he would let Putin do whatever the hell he wanted, it goes against everything that I was ever taught growing up. And all of us was taught growing up, if we would be honest, except I would say the people growing up in this generation here are going to be clueless. I don't mean to sound like an old man here, but these kids today are going to be pretty clueless if all they've grown up on is a steady diet of MAGA. If that's the case, they're going to grow up believing something completely different from the rest of us. So I wanted to show you where President Zelenskyy from Ukraine met with Kamala Harris and where he met with Donald Trump, and show you how both of them handled themselves, because here they are on the world stage with one of our allies, and the contrast between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, it's always so plain to see who is the more competent leader, who can handle themselves better on the world stage. Kamala Harris does so with grace, and we'll see later in the video that Donald Trump makes an absolute fool of himself, as always. But I wanted to start right here with this clip, and then we'll roll through some of them. And I just want you to see how presidential Kamala Harris already looks. Roll the clip.
Well, President Zelenskyy, it is good to see you again. This is our 7th visit together, and welcome back to Washington, D.C. As I have made clear on our 6 previous meetings and throughout Putin's brutal aggression and war against Ukraine, my support for the people of Ukraine is unwavering. I've been proud to stand with Ukraine. I will continue to stand with Ukraine, and I will work to ensure Ukraine prevails in this war. To be safe, secure, and prosperous, the United States must continue to fulfill our long-standing role of global leadership. We must stand with our allies and our partners. We must defend our democratic values and stand up to aggressors.
See, when I hear Vice President Kamala Harris say that, I don't hear Democrat versus Republican. I don't hear left versus right. That is an American idea to me. That is what I was brought up on. So if I had have went into a coma back in the 1980s and I had have woke up in 2024, I would have said, yeah, that's what we stand for in this country. But Kamala is just really starting to make her point, so let's keep rolling.
And the American people know well the meaning of freedom, of independence, and the importance of rule of law. These ideals are central to who we are as Americans. And some of the most important moments in our history have come when we stood up to aggressors like Putin, just as we must today. Indeed, standing with our friends and defending our ideals against tyranny has helped make America the most powerful and prosperous nation in the world. Putin's aggression is not only an attack on the people of Ukraine, it is also an attack on fundamental principles such as sovereignty and territorial integrity.
You see, folks, the part about all of this that is so baffling to me is that I have argued with Republican friends before over wars that we fought. During the Iraq War, I opposed it. I didn't think we should be there. And I had Republican friends who said we should be, and they said we should be because we should be putting democracy in the Middle East, that we should be removing a dictator, that we couldn't let Saddam Hussein continue to grow and get more strong because he would take over the entire Middle East. But now when you point out to them that Putin wouldn't stop at Ukraine, they're on the side with Putin. And as someone who grew up in the 80s, and we're going to talk more on this later, but as someone who grew up in the 80s, this is baffling to me. But Kamala's right. The world is watching us. Take a look.
We also know that other would-be aggressors around the world are watching to see what happens in Ukraine. If Putin is allowed to win, they will become emboldened. And history reminds us, and history is so clear in reminding us, the United States cannot and should not isolate ourselves from the rest of the world. Isolation is not insulation. So then, the United States supports Ukraine not out of charity, but because it is in our strategic interest.
See, this is what is so dangerous about Donald Trump's America First rhetoric. It sounds good on the surface when you hear someone say, let's put America first. Everyone says, yeah, let's do that. Let's take care of ourselves first. But what you got to realize is we have to stay in good standing in the world, because what happens in the world affects what happens here in America. And these are not radical ideas. That's the part that really blows my mind here. These are not radical ideas. I grew up hearing a Republican president say the very things that Kamala Harris is saying today. Her views on this is not far at all from Ronald Reagan, so let's bring this receipt.
In the last 15 years or more, the Soviet Union is engaged in a relentless military buildup, overtaking and surpassing the United States in major categories of military power, acquiring what can only be considered an offensive military capability. All the moral values which this country cherishes, freedom, democracy, the right of peoples and nations to determine their own destiny, to speak and write, to live and worship as they choose, all these basic rights are fundamentally challenged by a powerful adversary which does not wish these values to survive.
So to all the people who just tuned in to the political arena since Donald Trump came down the escalator, that was a Republican president back when I was a kid. And if he'd have said that today, if he had have been a Republican congressman or senator that came out today and said that same thing, Donald Trump and MAGA would be calling him a rhino. And I'm sure they will probably say that if they see this clip, oh, that's just a rhino. He's just Republican in name only. He's not a real Republican. No, Donald Trump's the one here that is not the real Republican. He's the one that's the extremist, and there was the receipt to prove it. But now we're going to get to the part where Trump absolutely embarrasses himself like he always does. So it's painful to watch to me, but let's look at it anyway.
So what I expect to hear from the President Zelenskyy, what are your expectations?
Say it a little louder.
What are your expectations from this meeting? What do you expect to hear from Mr.
Nothing.
President?
Look, this is a meeting, and we have a big race going on right now. I guess 37 days left, and we're leading in the polls, and so we'll see how it all works out. Hopefully it'll work out, but if it does, we're going to work very much with both parties to try and get this settled and get it worked out. It has to end at some point. It has to end. He's gone through hell, and his country has gone through hell like few countries have ever, like it's happened anywhere. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. It's a terrible situation. And I will say I have had a great relationship. It was very honorable. I don't even know if you know this, but when they did the impeachment hoax, it was a hoax, just a Democrat hoax, which we won. But one of the reasons we won it so easily is that when the president was asked, it was over a phone call with the president, and he said he could have grandstanded and played cute, but he didn't do that. He said President Trump did absolutely nothing wrong.
Okay, before we keep rolling, have you guys noticed how here lately both Trump and Vance are starting to do this thing where they go, I didn't hear you, could you speak a little louder? I almost feel like that's done on purpose. I don't think it's because they didn't hear the question. I think it's because they need a minute to try to figure out what the hell they're going to say next. And notice how quickly he shifted it to it's all about him. We're in a race. I'm leading in the polls. Everything against me was a hoax. He just turned it to him. And not one time does he say, I want to see Ukraine win this thing. He doesn't say that. He just says, I want to see it end. I want to bring it to an end. But he doesn't say which side he's on. And pay close attention to what he says in this next clip.
We have a very good relationship, and I also have a very good relationship, as you know, with President Putin. And I think if we win, I think we're going to get it resolved very quickly. I really think we're going to get it resolved.
I hope we have more good relations.
We're going to have. Oh, I see. Yeah, but you know, it takes two to tango. You know, and we will. We're going to have a good meeting today, and I think the fact that we're even together today is a very good sign. And hopefully we'll have a good victory, because if the other side wins, I don't think you're going to have victories with anything, to be honest with you. So
yeah, he actually said it takes two to tango. That tells you exactly whose side he's on. And I think Zelenskyy knows that. And can you imagine being Zelenskyy and meeting with both Harris and Trump and hearing what Harris had to say, reassuring you that we're on your side and we're going to make sure you win this thing. And on the other side, well, it takes two to tango. I just want this thing to come to an end. Folks, this is not the America that I grew up in. Donald Trump and his MAGA movement does not represent the America that any of us grew up in. I'm Gen X. I came in right at the tail of Gen X. and definitely relate to them more because I was raised by two boomer parents. My boomer parents were raised with the same ideas that I was raised with and everyone else was. The unfortunate part is the kids today, and not to sound like an old man again, but the kids today are growing up listening to Donald Trump and listening to MAGA, and this is one of those things that we're going to be in this for a long time. We'll beat Donald Trump come November, but once it's all over, we still got so much work to do to undo the damage that he's done. That's why that I get so upset at left-leaning people when they want to go off on these wars against woke and they want to start talking and downplaying all of those things, because I say to myself, if you sit back and jump on that train and just echo what Fox News and Newsmax is saying and you act as though you're agreeing with them, you're going to have an entire generation grow up to not understand the principles and the values that this country truly was founded on. They're going to grow up not knowing what racism or bigotry truly is, because every time it gets brought up, they're just going to be told that it's woke, and that's a bad word. So it's very important that we keep bringing these receipts and showing people who we are and reminding people of who we are and where we came from. The people that support Trump, I don't mean to be this blunt, but actually I do. They sat down, they watched a bunch of reality shows. He was a reality show host of Celebrity Apprentice. They got a hard-on for celebrities, and they thought that a celebrity could run the country like a game show, and they had never read a history book. And I'm so sick and tired of the people I grew up with that slept through history class and used to make fun of me because I would go to the library on my lunch break and read books. They used to come in like the old Bill Hicks skit. One of my favorite comedian of all time, hands down, was Bill Hicks. And he had a skit where he talked about reading a book while he was eating in a Waffle House, and the waitress came up and said, "What you a reading for?" And he said that was funny to me. I'd never been asked what I was reading for. Like, she could have asked, "What was I reading? Why are you?" But what was I reading for? And the reason we're reading is because we don't want history to repeat itself. That's why we read. And I'm so tired of being lectured by people who fell asleep in history class and woke up watching Donald Trump on Celebrity Apprentice and went, "Oh, this is how the country works." We have to stay focused here, folks, because there's more at stake. We talk about the stakes in this election, but there's so much going forward. It's not going to end on November 5th because the damage Trump done is still going to be there, and we're still going to have to be educating people and bringing people up to speed. And if we don't have some sensible Republicans stand up and start trying to distance themselves from this, if they just double down on this and continue to try to carry on this mantle that Trump has started, we're in for the long haul. We truly are. So we just got to keep putting in the work because our democracy depends on it. Well, folks, I want to thank you guys so much for tuning into this video. And again, right now I am doing as much research as I can. I'm trying to gather as much information as I can about all the devastation that's going on here on the East Coast due to the hurricane, and I'm going to be doing more content about that. We want to raise awareness to that and get people the help they need. Everybody out there, just stay safe and help your neighbor. Set aside your political differences and understand that this is it, folks. This is what makes us truly great, is when we can come together and pull ourselves up. And so help your neighbor, be good to one another, and let's get through this, because I'm very lucky where I'm sitting that the only thing that happened to me was I had to go a day and a half without electricity and internet, and I had a tree across my road. But there are towns in my part of the world underwater and completely destroyed, and my heart breaks to see it. So let me know you're safe, and stay safe, and let's just keep doing the work, because what happens abroad affects us here at home. We can't never lose sight of that. We can't lose sight of what this country was founded on just because some Celebrity Apprentice host decided that he wanted to be a leader for a day. We cannot let that happen. So thank you guys so much for supporting what I do. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, and let's just keep moving forward.